Well, hello, everyone, and welcome here to the St. Anselm Coaches Show, live here on Davison Hall every Tuesday, recorded noon to 1 and then heard back on ESPN New Hampshire and ESPNNewHampshire.com Tuesday nights, 5:30 to 6:30, 900 and 1200 a.m. Joining me in a moment, the defensive line coach for the football team, a Manchester legend, John Trisciani, will make his debut in just a few moments. We'll also speak with the director of admission, Eric Nichols, has the final say on whether or not you are accepted. So we'll find out what he looks for when it's time to decide who's in and who's out. Second half hour, a familiar name, Dr. Joanne Nestor, now the interim athletic director. She was the former athletic director as well, and always a good interview. So we'll talk to her in the second half hour. And, of course, we end the show with a look back on the week that was and a look at the week ahead in St. Anselm's athletics. It's all, of course, brought to you by St. Anselm College, which features 20 NCAA Division II programs, most of which compete in the highly competitive Northeast 10 Conference. With over 100 home events this season, there are plenty of chances to catch the Hawks in action. If you can't make it to the game, log on to StAnselmHawks.com. Follow along with free live stats for every home contest, or better yet, be sure to check out StAnselmHawks.tv for live video broadcasts as well throughout the season. All right, John Trisciani is my guest, my former coach back in the day as well. He's since made his way on to the campus here on the Hilltop. He's been here now for 5 seasons, and in my estimation, his group, the defensive line, has been consistently improving throughout the season. Coach, you agree?
Yes, Nick. The defensive line has been strong. This week, the head coach gave out Defensive Player of the Week. And for the first time here in my time, he gave it out to more than one player, and it was actually 3 defensive linemen. Andrew Lebowitz, who you had on your show last week. Justin
Who's an
Walter.
intimidating presence, by the way.
Yeah, he is an intimidating presence.
He's a big kid.
Justin Walter and Lou Licciardi. So it was a good week out of the defensive line.
And really, sorry, Coach, but it really kind of accumulated, I think, in this last week, because they had been getting better and better throughout the year.
They're veteran players. They've played a lot of football here at St. Anselm, as well as Josh Cheever, who did not play this week. But those are 4 veteran guys who have played a lot of games at St. Anselm College and done a nice job for us. But as a defense, we need to play better.
Yeah, there's still some work to do for sure. Surrendering 27 points in the second half, but you're talking about those veteran D linemen getting the game ball. You as a coach expect those vets to kind of play like that and play consistently well.
My expectations for what I coach, the defensive line, are very high. It's a physical position, so we start off with rule number 1, which I can word for you in a little different way than I might word it.
Please do.
Rear end down.
Yep.
Head up.
Yep.
And be physical.
The censored version.
Which is the basics of defensive line. You want to be able to play with good leverage, have your head up so you can see your work, keep yourself safe, and then we want to be physical in every aspect of the game.
Talking with John Trisciani, the defensive line coach, and his defensive line certainly performed pretty well despite the loss over the weekend. And you mentioned Lebowitz. He's been on the show here before. Big kid, a lot of promise coming in. He's now one of those veterans you talk about. Still got a year of eligibility left. Obviously, there's still some games to play here this year, but what do you expect for him moving forward?
Andrew Lebowitz, in my opinion, is a guy that could play at the next level. I think Andrew Lebowitz could be playing for UNH in the CAA. He's that type of player. A little bit undersized for what they're looking for. But a heck of a football player since day one when he walked in here out of New Hampton School and was at Andover High School down in Massachusetts prior to that.
And it was you who recruited him, he said.
That's what he said?
That's what he said.
It must be true then.
How'd you stumble onto him down there?
I knew Ed Kiley, who was the head coach at New Hampton.
Yeah.
And Ed Kiley said he was a Division I AA prospect at the time. And I knew Ed Kiley knew football. So we had Andrew on campus, had a nice conversation with him and his father. And here he is now. He's been a very, very easy guy to coach.
Talking football with defensive line coach John Trisciani. Coach, you said it earlier, this defense does have some work to do. What specifically needs to happen this week, let's say, to turn it around coming up Friday night?
I think defensive play is a pretty simple thing. We need to get off blocks and make tackles, and we need to cover people. And we need to do a better job at it, and we need to get better this week. We started last night, and I need to coach it better. I don't think it's anything confusing. I think that's the key right there.
The opponent, LIU Post, have struggled a little bit this year, kind of a new team, but not really. They were around at this level, just not as a conference opponent up until this season. What do you know about them early in the week?
Well, LIU Post is formerly known as CW Post,
right,
which at one time was in this league. They left the league to go into the PSAC in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference.
Which is a pretty good conference.
Which is a very good conference on a national level.
Yeah.
We've played Kutztown down there before, and
they're usually
that conference,
ranked.
Sure, that conference does very well at the national level. Now they're coming back to the NE10. You know, their record is not stellar, but what I see on film is a very good football team. Good power running game. Couple of quick backs. They can throw the football. Good on defense. Have been very competitive in this league. And we're expecting a big game out of them on Friday night.
John Trisciani is the guest, defensive line coach here with the St. Anselm Hawks football team. We'll talk with Director of Admission Eric Nichols in just a couple of minutes. I want to talk a little bit about your background. You obviously started where exactly? I knew you were with the Manchester Bears for a long time and then coached at the high school level as well before coming here to St. A's. But what exactly, let's go before the Bears, I guess, back to your playing days. Let's start there.
I played for Trinity High School. And from there, I walked out of Trinity High School and started coaching with the Manchester Vikings, which you may or may not be familiar with. The head coach was Bob Lawrence. Jimmy Schubert, who later became a big name over at Central High School, was on that staff. And, the Manchester Vikings were the finest football program in Manchester at the time.
And was
some
it Pop
might
Warner,
say
or?
it's the finest since.
Was it Pop
Warner? It was
Warner?
Bantam Pop Warner, so high school age players, freshmen and sophomores with a weight limit.
Yeah.
And then I coached youth football in a lot of different places. East Blue Devils, Youngsville Hawks. Ended up at the Manchester Bears where you played, which is no weight limit, up to 8th grade. So I had a very interesting start for someone who ends up at a college, 34 years later. I had coached at Memorial in there for a couple of years. Later on, I came back at Memorial in 2002 for 5 years. Then I went to Trinity High School for about 30 months, the 2007-2008 season. And then I ended up here.
And how did you end up here?
I knew Pat Murphy. He had gotten his start in college coaching with Sandy Ruggles, who was my high school coach at Trinity. And he said, "Do you want to coach here?" And I said, "No." I said, "If I wanted to coach here, I would have asked you for an interview or I would have applied." And he said, "Well, you don't need an interview and you don't need to apply. Do you want to coach here?" And I said, "No." I was quite content where I was at Trinity High School.
Yeah.
And we continued to talk. And 2 years later, he had an opening at the last minute. And I thought it was an opportunity for me. And I said yes. And I've never looked back. And I've been here. This is my 5th season right now with Coach Murphy. And it's been a very good experience.
Talking with John Trisciani, former youth football coach, now head of the defensive line and the equipment manager as well for the entire staff. He's been here for, what now, Coach, 5 seasons?
This is my 5th season here as a coach.
And what are there more differences or more similarities between coaching at the college level versus the youth level?
having had the experience of coaching 9-year-olds through 23, which is kind of unusual for people to have.
Right, that's a wide range.
Yeah, I think it's, this is my 34th year. I think this is what I tell people. It's coaching football. It's all the same. The older the players are, the better the players are, the more committed they are, the easier it is to coach. So I would say that this has been the easiest place I've ever coached at. We have good kids here, and the older guys make it a lot easier. Somebody's already taught them the base fundamentals, how to act, how to conduct themselves,
right.
And they're very committed here.
Right. That's interesting. You say the older they get, obviously the better, bigger, stronger they get, but also the harder they work. That's something you found to be accurate.
Sure. It takes a big commitment for these guys because it's year-round. We're in winter workouts at 6 a.m., ties into spring football, which is a lot of 6 a.m.s. They're in the weight room constantly. In season, their schedule is meetings, weight room practice, not to mention what they need to do in college academically. So they have to be committed. There's no option, or they wouldn't be playing college football.
What would you like to see this program do to improve? Again, I don't like to look towards next year with 2 games to go, but let's start there. What can you do over the next 2 games besides the obvious, which is get a couple of victories, but to kind of bring the momentum with you into the offseason and then set things up for next year?
I think the important thing is right now in this program is to continue to coach hard, continue to keep the expectations high, which they have been with Coach Murphy, and the message is clear to the players. No one's letting up. No one's toning things down at the end of the year.
Right.
Our players want to win. Every game is an individual event.
Yep.
And they're playing as hard now as they were game 1. And it's important to them, and they just need to stay the course, and we need to stay the course coaching them.
You mentioned coaching harder. How does that work?
To me, I'm a little old school. You might be aware of that.
Well aware.
I've coached a lot of football games that have ended up being losses. And I think year after year after year, no matter where I've been, to me, it's always the same answer. We need to play better. We need to be better at the fundamentals. And I need to coach better. And it's a simple process to me.
Good stuff. Obviously, the regimen is already in place, the off-season schedule, but anything you can do to ramp up the other 9 months of the year? I mean, obviously, the 6 a.m. workouts and that constitute as going pretty hard, but anything else you can maybe throw in there to tweak it?
If I took you in for winter workouts or spring football, you'd get an up-close look, and I'd be glad to bring you in.
I wouldn't survive.
You would say, yeah, Trish, that's pretty ramped up. So I think we're about as ramped up as we can be from a standpoint of the commitment of our players in the off-season. They're being coached hard, and we just need to stay the course and keep banging away at it.
Yeah, and again, there's been a significant improvement, I think, with the defensive line, particularly from week 1 until this week.
And there have been improvements everywhere. We came in with a freshman quarterback this week, Yanni Gavalis, who replaced Andrew Murphy, who was a little banged up. And
what'd you think of his performance?
I thought it was great. Throws left-handed. I'm watching him. I'm thinking, this guy looks like Kenny the Snake Stabler. Throwing with the wrong hand. Like to see the lefty. He came out right off the bat, threw a 65-yard touchdown pass in the first series to Keith Charles.
Yep.
Who, as you know, Keith Charles has been the guy around here. He's been doing a great job as a senior in the backfield.
And you want to talk about consistency. Charles is probably the definition.
After this week, finish the day, he has over 5,000 career all-purpose yards. He's the second player in the history of the program to reach 5,000 all-purpose yards. He rushed for 118 the other day, had 2 touchdowns, caught 9 passes for 118 yards and another score.
Those are serious numbers.
And doing the games, Keith Charles is a football player. And he's another guy we have here that could play for anybody. we came right out of the blocks hard with that touchdown. Then next time AIC took over the ball, we had a big hit from your guy Andrew Lebowitz on the quarterback, forced an interception to Isaac Jorgensen, and so it was a fast start. We just need to have the ability to hold on. We've had a number of games, as you've seen, where we've been in the game at halftime, and we need to push on, be stronger in the second half. Football's a simple game, Nick. It's not rocket science. It's fundamentals and getting after it, and that's what our guys are trying to do. And if we keep banging away at it, the tide will turn.
Yeah, good stuff. Coach, been a pleasure talking with you. It was a pleasure playing for you as well.
I'll bet.
Although I didn't play that much, but I certainly learned a lot, and that's an honest answer. So, Coach, thanks again.
All right. Great to see
you,
Nick.
Was
Thank
mine,
you very much.
And we'll talk again soon. That's John Trisciani, defensive line coach for the St. Anselm Hawks football team. A guy well known in Manchester, does some stuff with Manchester Community Television, and obviously he rattled off the laundry list of teams that he's coached for in the Manchester area. So that's a source of football knowledge here on the Hilltop, no doubt about that. Nick and Astis here with you on the St. Anselm Coaches Show, heard every Tuesday on ESPN New Hampshire and ESPNNewHampshire.com from 5:30 to 6:30. You can find that on the AM dial 900 and 1250 AM. A reminder, ESPN New Hampshire and Apple Therapy have joined forces to find the most unique, accomplished, and skilled senior high school student athletes in the Granite State. Every year, ESPN New Hampshire will honor one high school senior boy and one senior girl for our Apple Therapy Student Athlete of the Week. And then from the weekly winners, we will select a Student Athlete of the Month. At the end of the school year, all the monthly winners will be invited to a banquet where we will name our Apple Therapy Student Athletes of the Year. One boy, one girl, each get a $2,500 scholarship for college. Requirements: must be a senior in a New Hampshire high school, must play a varsity sport, and must have a 3.0 GPA or higher. To nominate, send the player's name, high school, and accomplishments via email to matt@espnnh.com. All brought to you by Apple Therapy, bringing you back to your life. Thanks to Coach Trisciani for stopping by. We're going to welcome in now Eric Nichols, the Director of Administration.
Nice
Welcome aboard.
You. How are you?
Always like to have a conversation from somebody in your office to find out what exactly you guys are looking for when you select students, whether or not they'll be accepted or denied. I guess what's the basics when you begin to sift through all those applications?
Sure. Well, the foundation is still academics. It always has been. But in addition to just looking at a GPA, we never identify a student by a number alone.
Yep.
So we'll also look at the strength of that curriculum. So you have two students that, for example, could have a 3.0. They could be very different depending on what they're getting that 3.0 in.
Right.
So are they taking honors courses, AP courses, a combination? So those factors are very important to us. But we also look for students that are well-rounded, that are involved in sports and have leadership positions, that are going to make a commitment and an impact on our campus as well.
So the athletics are factored in as one of the top priorities.
It's definitely a factor, absolutely. And the coaches are very helpful in identifying who are their top prospects, and so they rise a little higher in the pool because they're going to make more of an impact on our campus. In the end, we're trying to shape a class of students that are going to get involved in a number of different ways, and athletics is one of those pieces.
Interesting. Speaking with Eric Nichols, Director of Admission here on the Hilltop on the St. Anselm Coaches Show. Well, you mentioned it. You want to get more athletes on campus because you can count on them to be active in student activities.
That's true. And so I'm going to my second year here, and part of the training with coaches over the summer was to give them an indication of exactly where we're going to be recruiting, so that there's more communication between our offices, so they're aware of where we're going, and more importantly, we're aware of where they're recruiting, so we can find where there's crossover and where there's areas where we can collaborate. So, for example, I spent a week out in Minneapolis, and Kirsten Matthew, the ice hockey women's coach, gave me a list of students that she was looking at And so I was able to actually meet some of those students when I was visiting as well. And it was great to have that collaboration. And that's starting to happen in all of our sports. And so that's important because we can't be working in silos. And we have a great relationship between our two offices here.
Yeah, good to get everybody on the same page for
Absolutely.
sure. Now, what about students that maybe made a mistake in the past and maybe got in trouble at school?
What kind of mistake?
Or with the law? Well, that's the thing. I mean, do you weigh it case by case, or?
Sure. I mean, we're talking about 16, 17, 18-year-olds.
Right.
You were that age once, you remember. And so it depends on the gravity of the situation. The most important thing for us, though, is that they are upfront and honest about it. So as part of the application process, if there were any kind of disciplinary actions, they're supposed to indicate that and explain what happened. So students that do that do very well in the process versus the ones that fail to tell us about those
Try
things.
to hide it.
Exactly. Because that can be worse.
Right.
That can be worse.
Eric Nichols joining us, the Director of Admission here on the St. Anselm campus. The students and the student athletes, you talked about how it's a positive for a student to have been involved in high school athletics. Are the requirements the same? Are the standards the same that you look for? It must be, right?
The standards are exactly the same. Actually, statistically, our student athletes have come in at the same level overall as our overall class, and in some cases even higher. So it's actually a bonus that they're also good on the field.
Right.
Now, having said that, like any college, students that are on the margins academically, those other factors can help tip the scales.
Right.
So a student who's a very strong athlete, that could be a deciding factor, one of many, in terms of admission. Whereas maybe a student that doesn't have that involvement, we choose to pass on that student.
And yet the standards are still
exactly
high enough where you're getting a quality kid either way, really.
Our goal is that we don't want to set up anyone for failure, whether they play hockey or football, or it has nothing to do with sports. Our job is to find students that are a good fit that will succeed here, because we're not doing our job well if after one semester or 1 year they leave because they're having trouble academically. Now that's going to happen at any campus, but we don't want to lower our standards for any students, regardless of whether it's athletics or not.
Well, what happens when the student does get into some trouble with academics while they're still on campus, still playing for their team?
Mm-hmm.
They're proactive about it. They want to pick up the grades a little bit, but how does your office kind of monitor that situation?
Actually, our office isn't directly involved with monitoring it once they're here. I'm aware of who may be having issues academically, but what does happen here is that there's a strong support network with the coaching staff and the fellow students to identify those students that may need some extra help and get them in touch with the people on campus that do help them with, whether it's maybe some tutors to help with writing assignments so that they don't get too far behind in class. So I'm not directly involved in that, but I know that is happening here.
What else makes up your day? What are some of your other responsibilities? I'm sure you've got your hands full.
Well, it's cyclical. So in the fall, I'm traveling. So is my entire office. We have, besides myself, 8 counselors that travel all across the country. They end up visiting over 1,000 high schools in a 8-week period between mid-September and the beginning of November. In New England, the Mid-Atlantic states, California, Florida, the Midwest. And so that is pretty much our entire attention is devoted to that in the fall. And then as soon as they come back off the road, we have thousands of applications waiting for us to evaluate.
So it's almost like a big 8-week recruiting trip from an academic standpoint.
It is. For some of our counselors, they sometimes forget what their apartment looks like, I'll admit. So, but that's part of the job. It's actually a lot of fun to get out there and meet students. Each year it's different. It's a new crop. Our counselors have developed relationships with the school counselors in their independent in specific areas. And when the applications come in, they're the ones that actually read those applications. So Ashley, who visits California, will end up reading all the applications that come from California. And they've developed relationships with these students along the way. So that by the time spring rolls around, we've admitted students, then we turn into event planners. And we have open house events for all our admitted students. And then hopefully on May 1, you get the number you're looking for.
Not a whole lot of downtime, huh?
No, not really, but that's okay. That's okay.
Now, what about yourself? How'd you get into this line of work? How'd you end up at St. Anselm?
Well, I've been in admission for just over 10 years. Majority of my career has actually been at Stonehill College, another friend of the NE10.
Sure.
Spent 2 years at Brown University as well. But found my way to St. Anselm because, opportunity to come to another private Catholic liberal arts school that was looking for a new director. It was hard to pass it up because liberal arts is very important to me. I'm a product of that myself, and it's very easy for me to promote that. And the values that this place brings to its students and to the faculty and staff, it makes my job that much easier. And it's just a very supportive place to work.
Let's pretend I'm 17 and undecided. What would you say to me to get me to come here?
To come here? The food's really good. That usually works with 17-year-olds. We start with that.
Well, it is actually, right? Award-winning.
It is. Top 12 in the country.
Yep.
So just ask any of the students in here. So we usually start with that. But for undecided, actually what we tell them is, you know what? A quarter of our kids come in undecided. They have no clue what they want to do, and that's okay. Because they come here and they find their way with the support of advisors, with the community members, and they're ending up leaving. And this is where you turn attention to the parents, and they're getting jobs. So
Right.
98% of our students are fully employed or in graduate school within 6 months of graduation.
Wow.
So that usually helps to hit the message home. And, for us, it's just getting that 17-year-old to visit our campus.
Yeah.
We seal so many deals by just having them come to campus and see it for themselves. So this is an authentic, we're being authentic when we're saying this is a supportive community.
Good stuff. Enjoyed talking with you.
You
That's
too.
Eric Nichols,
Thank you very much.
Director of Admission, giving us the inside scoop on what to present when you apply to St. Anselm College. Good stuff with Eric. Coming up on the other side, we'll talk to the interim athletic director, Dr. Joanne Nestor, a familiar face and a familiar name. She returns to the Hilltop. We'll find out what's going on there when we come back. It's the St. Anselm Coaches Show, and it's right here on ESPN New Hampshire and ESPNNewHampshire.com. Well, welcome back here to St. Anselm College. It's the St. Anselm Coaches Show, live from Davidson Hall every Tuesday from noon to 1, heard back on ESPN New Hampshire and ESPNNewHampshire.com Tuesday nights, 5:30 to 6:30. And, of course, special thanks to John Trisciani, defensive line coach of the football team. Joining me earlier, Eric Nichols, the director of admission as well. Just a few moments, Dr. Joanne Nestor, the interim athletic director, will join me as we continue with the St. Anselm Coaches Show. It's brought to you by St. Anselm College. It features 20 NCAA Division II programs. They compete in the highly competitive Northeast 10 Conference. Over 100 home events this season. Plenty of chances to catch the Hawks in action. Log on to StAnselmHawks.com. Follow along with free live stats or check out StAnselmHawks.tv for the live video broadcasts. Well, let's welcome in Interim Director of Athletics, Dr. Joanne Nestor. Nice to talk to you on air.
Nice to be here.
And welcome back, of course. You were here as athletic director a few years ago and now returned to the seat. Talking off air, you've had a long list of stops along the way. Indiana, California, Florida, and now back here in New Hampshire. What do you like about St. A's and the Hilltop that compares to some of those other places in the country that you've been?
Well, the biggest similarity is the fact that it's a very, very high-end academic institution, and that has a lot of advantages in drawing students who are actually student athletes instead of just athletes trying to be students. We have very, very serious students here, and with our really, really good admissions group that look to make sure every student athlete that we bring here has a good opportunity to exceed athletically as well as academically. It's a good combination, and it's very similar to some of the other places where I've been. I was at St. Mary's College at Notre Dame for 9 years, and again, a very high-end academic institution. Then spent 9 years at Dartmouth College in New Hampshire, which is where I found out about St. A's because we've scrimmaged St. A's in some of our sports. Again, very high-end academic with the Ivy League connection. Then went out to San Diego at the University of San Diego, again, small Catholic liberal arts, high-end academic. So they all have a common denominator, and it was very attractive to me when St. A's opened up the first time because it had those characteristics that I was very interested in. I was never interested in being in a factory-type atmosphere where in some of the Division I programs. They just rolling out, using athletes, and then whatever happens, happens. And that's not the philosophy here at St. A's, and it's certainly not mine. We do understand that the commitment to athletics is extremely important, but the commitment to academics is what they're going to be doing for the rest of their lives. So again, very attractive to me. I love the Catholic liberal arts atmosphere and background, the Benedictine history, and the fact that our campus is absolutely drop-dead gorgeous. And it's easy to recruit here because of the academics and because of the caring atmosphere that we always strive for here on the Hilltop.
Dr. Joanne Nestor, the interim athletic director, is our guest here on the St. Anselm Coaches Show. Coach, you mentioned the factory, and I've heard that term before in regards to some of the bigger Division I programs who, as you said, just are looking to turn athletes into students, and that's not always the case, nor do some schools not really care either. This seems like a genuine alternative.
Exactly, and I'm not accusing places of not caring. I'm just saying there's a different priority placed on the athletic programs at places that are larger and more focused on the financial aspects rather than the experience of the student athlete and the developmental phase that the students are going through during their period of time here from 18 to 21 years old. So we're more focused on the end product being the successful student athlete rather than the end product being an NFL contract or a professional contract, because that's not what our athletes are looking to do. And quite frankly, that is a lot of the student athletes that go to the larger Division I high-end athletic focus are looking for a career after they graduate or after they leave, and in some cases don't graduate. Right. So our graduation rate is extremely high, and not many of our students go into professional athletics. They're very talented, but that's not the direction or the emphasis on their experience here.
We spoke with Eric Nichols, the director of admission, a few moments ago here on the show, and he mentioned a stat that I just find kind of mind-boggling. 98% of graduates go on to find work in their field within 6 months. That seems like maybe the statistic that you would want to highlight.
Right. Well, and it's either graduate school or employment. And it's a statistic we're very proud of. And that comes from a good career services department, a good mentoring program, students coming and getting their feet on the ground and deciding what they want to do, and then going out and getting the experience they need. For instance, in the Institute of Politics, we have so many intern opportunities from the Institute of Politics for our students that are in pre-law or in government or in politics. And so we offer other ways and other vehicles to get to those employment opportunities, and our students take full advantage of them.
Yeah. Seems like politics over the last few years anyway have really come hand in hand when you talk about St. Anselm College and how they host events over at the the Dana Center, and
right, and the New Hampshire Institute of Politics, which is right down the street.
Right, there it is. So is that drawing maybe more and more attention from maybe kids out of state that just say, you know what, I don't know where I want to go, but I know I want to kind of get into politics and stuff like that?
I don't know the stats on that, but I do know that it's become a focal point for the college. It's the New Hampshire Institute of Politics at St. Anselm College, and the publicity we've gotten through that with the debates and with the presidential candidates coming here first to New Hampshire really has been a springboard for that opportunity for our student athletes and for students to look at what we are offering. A lot of our student athletes come here because of the New Hampshire Institute of Politics. Not a huge percentage, but enough that we differentiate ourselves from some of the other like institutions because of that opportunity for them.
Dr. Joanne Nestor is our guest, the interim athletic director here at St. Anselm College. Let me just ask a broad question here as we shift gears a little bit. Okay. What's the state of the athletic department in terms of the teams? I mean, there's been successes here in the fall, winter right around the corner. You know athletics. So what do you think about these teams here? And give me your opinion.
Well, I think that our soccer team, our women's soccer team right now is still in the hunt for an NE10 playoff, and I think hockey's on the cusp, and perhaps volleyball. Men's soccer is not right now, but not because they didn't have a great season. I mean, like the other day, we lost 26 seconds left in double overtime with a wonderful shot by the student from the opposing team, who will go nameless. But they've played very, very well, and we're very close to just turning the corner and going from, we almost won to at least a 500 season or better. The addition of the turf field for us has been huge because it's allowed our student athletes to have more practice time and without interfering with their studies, and it gives our students in general opportunity for intramural activities, for clubs to play. So the turf facility was hands down one of the best things that has happened to this program in the last two years. So we're thrilled about it, and it really does help us with the recruitment process to bring the field hockey players, the football players, the soccer players, men's and women's lacrosse onto this campus and highlight that facility, that you can play your home games there in practice. With the addition of lights, it gives us more opportunity to service more teams instead of being inside from, as you know, January through, in some cases, May, right, before you can really get out and play here. So, right. But our fall teams are doing all right. But again, we're only in the third year of a recruitment cycle with the turf there. So I see that improving as we go along and as we become more successful in those sports.
What about around the corner? And we'll preview, by the way, all the winter sports, hear from all the coaches right here on the St. Anselm Coaches Show. But there were some teams that really had some great years last year that play in the wintertime.
Our men's basketball team, and I saw our women's team play the other two, our men's basketball team is really going to be fun to watch. Mm-hmm. They are a talented group of young men. They're well coached, and they're a great representative of this institution. Women's basketball, I saw a lot of good things yesterday and the day before. They've scrimmaged twice and won both of their scrimmages. So, again, a lot of young talent coming on there. Anytime you have a lot of young talent, it could go either way. You could be wonderful, or you could have should have been their season. So, but I'm really looking forward to them. Our men's and women's ice hockey programs are traditionally very sound, very strong programs, very successful programs, and I'm looking forward to them. Our women open up this weekend with games Friday and Saturday, and then the men are at home the following weekend. I believe it's the 15th they open up. So you can always expect excitement and action from both our men's and women's ice hockey teams.
Yeah, it seems like you can just pencil them in for a certain amount of wins each year, and they're always in the hunt. Coach Cini, Coach Matthews both do a great job.
Right.
Switching gears again, a little bit about your background. Where does your love for athletics come from?
Oh, let's see. I was the only girl in a neighborhood of 47 boys. So if I wanted to have
fun, my sister.
And most of the time, I had to bring my own ball before they would let me play. So my allowances for most of my childhood were used on buying balls so I could actually play. But then when they found out how talented I was, I didn't have to bring my own ball. So I've really had a love for athletics, and since I was very, very young, and literally did grow up in a neighborhood where that's all people did was play sports from whatever season it was, and it seemed like a good idea to make a career out of it, to be honest.
Which sports?
I played field hockey, basketball, lacrosse, and tennis in college.
Wow.
That was
all four in college?
That's when you could do that. It's before you had finite seasons. I'm a lot older than I look.
Well, still, even if it's
so
if
back
it's an
in
option,
the day,
that's still a lot of work.
But back in the day, you could actually have those four distinct seasons. Now, I must say that I did overlap tennis with lacrosse, but that's because I wanted to play lacrosse, and the tennis coach wanted me to play tennis, so they allowed me to play both. But in those days, it was really defined seasons. You played field hockey in the fall, and it ended in November 1st. You played basketball in the winter, and you played a spring sport. So it was very easy to be involved in all of those things at that time.
Is that better? Is that the better approach for let's say, a high school athlete to spread it around a little bit, or do you favor the specialized sport where it's 12 months a year?
It depends on what your goal is. If you intend to play a Division I sport and you are going to be a fully scholarship athlete, you're not going to have a choice.
Right.
You are going to be playing one sport.
Right.
Because that's just the nature of the beast. And with the fall seasons and the spring seasons and the off-season training and weightlifting, it really does monopolize, and coaches have an investment in you because they're paying for your tuition and room and board.
But as a high school student, in preparation for maybe the next level, should they specialize in one sport?
I think it's hard not to these days, but I think it's good for them to have experiences across as many sports as possible,
Right.
because giving them a smorgasbord of opportunity allows them to really make up their mind what they want to do.
Right.
But if they're focused in one area, I've seen it, they sometimes burn out more quickly as well.
Right.
Because they have just been over inundated with that sport and the pressure that goes along with that sport.
Right.
So for me, I'd like a broad-based program, but in some cases that's not possible.
Multi-sport athlete, Dr.
Yeah.
Joanne Nestor, joining us here. She's the interim AD on the Hilltop at St. Anselm. A few minutes left before the end of the show. Of course, we'll run down the week that was and take a look ahead at the week that will be. Of those 4 sports you played in college, what was your favorite?
My favorite? Golf.
Golf.
There were no golf teams for women back in the day, but that was one of mine. I think I enjoyed field hockey and lacrosse the most because you could play with reckless abandon, shall we say,
Right.
in those 2 sports, whereas basketball was a more defined, finite, so many more rules, So
you only get 5 fouls.
Yeah, exactly,
Right.
and you're on the bench. And I spent a lot of time on the pine in basketball, so it was a lot harder to be ejected from a game when you were playing field hockey or lacrosse. It just
Right.
didn't happen. So,
Right.
but 5 fouls and you're done in basketball. But I have to admit, I enjoyed all of them. One of the best experiences I ever had in college was my athletic career. But I also came from a background where academics were very important to me, and my parents made it very clear to me that the academic emphasis should be first priority, and you could do both. And they always encouraged me to do both.
How about your relationships here with some of the coaches?
I love our coaches. Our coaches are very, very dedicated. We don't have all full-time coaches. We have some coaches that are part-time still, and they do everything they can. They give up their free time. They give up their vacation time to make sure that they are 100% involved with their programs, both from the recruiting standpoint and from the on-field and practice standpoint. So I have to say our coaches are totally dedicated, and they are great, great people as well as efficient and excellent coaches.
Well, jokingly, or not maybe, John Trisciani came over and said, I am her bodyguard. If there's a problem, you let me know. So it seems like the two of you have formed a pretty good bond.
He's a special guy. He is he's a perfect example of the consummate coach, where you can be totally dedicated to providing great instruction and great teaching, but you're mentoring off the field, and that's what Trish does. He has a sign outside of his office that says, great experiences start here and problems are solved. And half the time when you see John, he's with a student athlete, not about football, but more about a personal issue or an academic issue, and they go to John for advice, which they do a lot of our coaches, but Trish is a special kind of guy.
Good sense of humor as well.
Great sense of humor. Of course, there's sometimes we don't know when he's joking, but I'm learning.
As athletic director, what's your favorite part of the job?
The student athletes, by far. When you walk across this campus and you see over 400 student athletes walking, going to class, going to special events, they're wearing their gear, they're proud of who they are, and they know what it takes to be a successful student athlete, and they do their best. And they're friendly, they're smart, they're funny, and I think our student athletes are unbelievable.
Yeah, it does kind of reinforce good feelings about where the youth is headed when you come up here and have some conversations with these student athletes. And, they certainly have put in the work to, I think, put St. A's athletics on the map. Seems like it has grown.
It has.
I grew up in Bedford. I attended sports camps here, basketball camps with Coach Dixon, and it just seems like in comparison to 20 years ago or so, it's a little bit more big time now.
Well, it's getting there, and I think the addition of our new president, Dr. DeSalvo, he gets it. He is very, very supportive. He sees athletics as part of the total marketing of the college, and it has its own place, and it's part of this institution. And I think he's going to make some really good, significant facility changes and some updating. And we're not going to stay status quo, that's for sure, not under his leadership.
Yeah, he's got a tennis background as well, I believe.
And a baseball background.
There you go. Yes, he was on the show back in September. So seems like you're right. It's important to not only have athletics available, but to use that as part of a marketing campaign. Seems like it's big. This weekend, a lot of events. We'll run down those in just a moment. But of the events, which one are you looking forward to the most?
Well, we have our home football game Friday night, and then I'm looking forward to that. And then ice hockey. I haven't seen the hockey teams play yet, so I'm really looking forward to seeing our women play.
Yeah, it's always fun when that new team kind of rolls out on the first game of the new season.
Exactly. A
lot of hype and a lot of speculation. So we wish them the best of luck, as hard to believe, but November right around the corner, and then we're diving headfirst into winter sports.
Yep.
So an exciting time for sure. Glad you're back in the fold. Enjoyed the talk.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's Dr. Joanne Nestor, the Interim Director of Athletics, joining us here on the St. Anselm Coaches Show. Good stuff. Always fun to talk with the athletic director and get the lowdown here on the athletic events. Nick and Astis with you on the St. Anselm Coaches Show. A few minutes left here. I want to thank John Trisciani, the defensive line coach, the equipment manager, for joining me earlier. Eric Nichols, director of admission. Dr. Joanne Nestor, my guest a moment ago. She is the interim athletic director. Well, let's take a look back at the week that was. We'll start with football. It fell 41-21 against first place AIC on Saturday. The Hawks did draw first blood and were tied 14-all at the break, but Yellow Jackets outscored the Hawks in the second half to earn the victory. Senior Keith Charles amassed 243 all-purpose yards, scored 3 times, and had himself quite a day. He surpasses the 5,000 career all-purpose yard mark, now standing at 5,036. And he's now second in the program, the second player to reach 5,000 all-purpose yards. Keen Williams, the junior out of DeWitt, New York, had his best game of the year. 8 catches and 113 yards. Freshman quarterback Yanni Gavalis made his first career start, went 30 of 44 for 305 yards and a touchdown. Shea Grayson set a record with a 66-yard punt, and that is now the longest punt in program history. 4 of Grayson's 5 punts inside the 20, by the way. Linebacker Isaac Jorgensen, the junior, 4 tackles and an interception. And let's welcome back safety Trevor Jesse, as he had 8 tackles and a fumble recovery. In field hockey, the field hockey team went 1-1 last week. They had a huge 3-1 victory at home against 10th-ranked Bentley on Wednesday night before they dropped a 4-1 non-conference decision at number 3 LIU Post on Saturday. Freshman goalkeeper Kate Sears posted a 2.5 GAA during the week, stopped 23 of 28 shots she faced. She had 4 saves in the win against Bentley and had a career-high 19 saves against the Pioneers. Senior Elizabeth Sears helped set the tone against Bentley as she assisted on the first 2 goals that gave the Hawks a 2-0 lead. Bentley answered 3 minutes later. Sophomore Nicole Rugen gave St. Anselm some insurance with just under 17 minutes remaining. Sophomore Canada Stewart out of nearby Derry, New Hampshire, scored the Hawks' lone goal against LIU Post. Hawks return to action and will resume conference play on Tuesday. It's tonight at 6 at Franklin Pierce. Men's soccer. They fell to Mercy 2-1 and St. Rose 2-1. It's part of their 0-2 week against the Mavericks on Thursday. Mark Kotsopoulos made 6 saves. George Lamptey scored the first goal of the game. Facing off against the Golden Knights, St. Anselm celebrated Senior Day. They honored the 9-member senior class before the start of the contest. St. Anselm scoring was led by the seniors Bruno De Silva, who sent a pass to Michael Kearney for the lead in the 10th minute. Women's soccer, unbeaten last week. They went 1-0-1. They took down Southern New Hampshire, 1-0 in overtime on Tuesday, and then a scoreless tie with Assumption on Saturday. Against the Penmen, Kendra Bonzar had the lone goal against Southern New Hampshire. The freshman Cassie Quantrapani made 9 saves to keep the Greyhounds off the board in the scoreless draw with Assumption, and was named the Northeast 10 goalkeeper and Rookie of the Week. The men's and women's cross-country teams, we spoke with them last week. They were in action on Sunday at the 15-team Northeast 10 Championships, which they hosted right here on St. Anselm campus. The women finished 12th, behind the 32nd place showing from senior Stephanie Kearsley, who finished in a time of 19:44. Sophomore Kevin Morse placed 66th in a time of 27:48 to pace the men, who were 13th overall. Golf placed 24th out of 38 teams at the 2013 New England Intercollegiate Golf Association Championships on Sunday and Monday at the Captain's Course in Brewster, Mass. The Hawks were led by Joseph Fitzsimmons and his 2-day score of 154, shooting a 79 on Sunday and a 75 on Monday. Volleyball went 2-1 on the week as they triumphed over St. Michael's 2-1 on Tuesday before falling to Adelphi University on Friday night in 5 sets. St. Anselm hosted the Dig Pink initiative on Saturday. They took down Pace 3-2. Senior Kyla Gustafson tallied her second straight double-double, 12 kills, 27 digs. Senior Vivian Fitzgerald nailed down 10 kills in the win over St. Mike's. Junior Natalie Steinwert had a career day with a career second best in kills with 9, a match-high 48 assists, and an all-time high in digs with 22. She hit for a team-best 389 and chipped in 1 service ace as St. Anselm College volleyball team played to a 3-2 victory over Pace. Both Gustafson and Steinwert recorded double-doubles in all 3 games the Hawks played this week. Well, that's just about going to do it for us. Reminder, football back in action at home on Friday. You can watch the broadcast on StAnselmHawks.tv. Ben Alcher and I will have the call. Special thanks to John Trisciani, the defensive line coach of the football team, for joining me in the first half hour. Also to Eric Nichols, the director of admission, Dr. Joanne Nestor, our special guest, the interim athletic directors, and of course the normal thank yous go to Eric Copeland, Mackenzie Frazier, and our engineer back at the ESPN New Hampshire studios, Tom Rowe. My name is Nick Anastas saying so long. We'll be back next week for another episode. This has been the St. Anselm Coaches Show right here on ESPN New Hampshire and ESPNNewHampshire.com.